Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of QuickMail.io.
And this is Jack from Emails That Sell.
Today, it's a rapid fire.
Rapid fire, we're going to run through 8 cold email questions. We got some of these questions on Quora, in the cold email topic, in the lead generation topic, and just questions that have been rattling around our brains for a little bit. So let's dive in. First question. What books out there would help me master cold emailing?
Well, I'm obviously biased because I got a book called How to Grow Your Business with Cold Email. But beside that, I think Jack and I are very big fans of Influence by Robert Cialdini. And I think that's very applicable whenever you're doing cold email to figure out everything about copywriting. Yeah, do you have any good book?
I do, and I'm just going to recommend one, but I think it's important enough to just highlight it all by itself. It's called Made to Stick, and it's written by the Heath brothers. I think reading Influence and Made to Stick will put you a few steps ahead of most cold email writers out there, just because it boils things down to the essence of what makes a good message. And I think both of those books do a really good job of just getting right to it and how to become a persuasive writer. So the next question, which industries or businesses is cold email not good for? In my opinion, since cold email is made to start conversations, any business that cannot justify having one-to-one conversations with potential customers probably should not be using cold email. The one exception here is even if you sell a widget for $1 and you may think that having a one-to-one conversation with a customer who's got a lifetime value of just $1, is it worth it? There almost always is a conversation you can have that will get you a leverage point so that one conversation might lead to 1,000 sales. But if you don't have any leverage points in that business, then I don't think the time would be worth having those one-to-one conversations. Therefore, cold email is probably not best.
I think I heard from users that basically any industry that is not in front of a computer is a difficult industry to catch. So, for example, mechanics are very difficult because they basically don't use email as a sort of like day job.
That's very true. I can add restaurants to that. It's quite tricky to get in.
It is, you're right. So it is tricky. You can get business owners of restaurants. It's much easier. But it is definitely some of those industries are difficult because they're hammered by cold email. They have to have their sort of like contact details on website like Yelp and things like that. It's not that it's impossible for those industries, but it's very noisy. And for the mechanics and other type of industry where they're mostly outdoor, mostly not spending their time on a computer, then it's just difficult to get to them and have a conversation by email because they're basically not using email. They're just using phone.
That's right.
And an in-contact person.
So probably if their customers are not sending them emails.
Exactly.
If their suppliers are not sending them emails, they're probably just not checking their inboxes frequently. Yeah, it doesn't mean that you can't be the first person to have success in a market that we're saying might be tough to crack.
True. And if you manage to crack it, then the barrier to entry is that much higher. So that's great.
All right, Jeremy. What's the best tool for finding somebody's email?
I'm going to name just a couple of ones that keep on coming. So you got Hunter, you got Find That Leads.
For me, I do like Hunter. I think it's got a good interface, a good price point, and even for really small companies, they've been able to pull up results. So I'm a fan of Hunter. Okay, let's keep the rapid fire going. What are some more unconventional ways to find somebody's email? So, all right, so there's a couple different ways. If Hunter, for example, can't return an email address for you, then if it's a small business, maybe it's an agency with one owner, maybe it's a mom and pop brick and mortar shop, then you can probably go to either who.is and look up their website, and it'll tell you who's registered for that domain. More often than not, it's the business owner We'll provide the name and contact details. I think by law, they have to provide some contact information. Speaking of by law having to provide contact information, looking up the terms of service page on any website needs to have a contact address. And I think I stole this one from you, Jeremy.
You did, bastard. I was about to actually say.
Oh man. Well, yeah, full credit to you. That is a good trick I picked up from you. But what else? Okay, so last one for small companies. If they're less than 5 employees or sometimes a little bit bigger, you can look up that company on bbb.org or I think it's manta.com. And those are just a directory for small businesses. Plug in the URL and I would say about 40% of the time you'll be able to get the email address for the business owner. Another less than tried method would be to use an email extractor on your Chrome browser. So it's an extension that you would install on Chrome, and any website that you're on, you can run that email extraction tool. And if there's an email on the page, it'll find it and add it to a spreadsheet for you. So sometimes if you have a virtual assistant who's helping grab emails from a contact page, this tool can be pretty helpful. And finally, one method that maybe you've never tried before, but I'm telling you, it does work. Just pick up the phone in order to get an email address. And maybe that sounds a little bit backwards, but if you're trying to get in touch with a very important contact at a larger company, you can call the office manager, and if they're not willing to patch you through them, perhaps they're willing to just share their email address so that you can pick up the conversation there.
A lot of time people like Gatekeeper and things like that, they will just say, oh, send an email to that email address just to get rid of you on the phone.
Right.
So it's a great way. And I got another one is you simply go to their chat if they have like a live chat on their website, and you go ahead and then you ask, hey, I want to, send a proposal or get something really interesting, what the email of your founder. And believe it or not, but that's how we integrated with Bright Verify. I just went to the website, contacted their support on their live chat, asked, hey, what's the email of your founder? I have some interesting proposition that I'd like to talk with him. And then they gave me, they say, hey, here's his email. I sent it, and 2 hours later, we had an integration in QuickMail. That was
nice.
That was cool.
If you can't find the email, there's somebody else that can, and there's a good chance you can contact them first. So one other method to piggyback on that is if you've got a mutual connection in LinkedIn, maybe sending a message to them to see if you can get a conversation going that way as a last resort. It takes time, but if you really need that person's email address, you can find it.
All right, let's move on.
Question 5.
How many cold email do most professionals receive a day? How many do you receive, Jack?
Yeah, let's just say in 2017, I got about 163 cold emails that actually were good enough for me to save and that made it to my inbox. So if I check spam, I think that number multiplies by 20 or something. But for the most part, about 160 halfway decent or better cold emails landed in my inbox, which probably tells you I'm not a highly sought after cold email guy. Jeremy, as a tech founder, I'm sure you're like way more than that.
I'm actually surprised that I don't receive more than that. I'm sure, Bill Gates and other big shots probably have got way more than me. I think I'm around 5 to 8 a day, but most are absolutely terrible and, hardly read more than the first line. It's very, very easy to spot that it is a cold email. So unfortunately, I just throw them to the trash bin very, very quickly. I'm very protective of my inbox in terms of unsubscribe to every mailing list. There is absolutely no mailing list that I subscribe to on my inbox. And the same with cold email. And sometime 1 or 2 cold email actually are interesting, but most of the time they just end up to the trash bin very quickly.
What should my cold email signature contain? What kind of information about me should I make sure is in my signature? And maybe what things should I make sure I delete from that signature? So if we're talking about compliance, you're going to want to make sure that you have an address in your cold email signature. So a physical address to your company. Next, besides the standard name, job title, company you work for, I would be hesitant to include an image because I think HTML signatures have become a little bit more popular these days. But just remember, every new image that you add into your cold emails is throwing off that text to image ratio that some spam filters look at in order to pass it to the inbox or send it to spam. I would just be a little bit hesitant with the number of links that you include too. Like, I think it's perfectly fine to throw in a LinkedIn profile link, but maybe keep it there so that you don't add Facebook and Twitter and, maybe your About Me page. Just keep it simple and your signature is done.
Okay, I think social links are hurting your deliverability as well. And, if you're looking at starting a conversation, you don't need to give them the whole list of links on, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, whatever kind of thing. So I think one link is okay. Actually, one of the sort of like clever link is to add a link to YouTube. That will put that small little video snippet at the bottom when you're opening on Gmail without having to include anything, which is nice because people are just curious. They're going to click on it and then, it's the YouTube stuff. So down the rabbit hole.
Okay, cool. So we have 2 more rapid fire questions. Should I use a PS in my cold emails?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Even I, who is extremely harsh when I receive a cold email, in the amount of time I give it to judge, is it going to the trash or not? I always look at the PS because the PS is your chance to have a personal discussion or a personal connection with the person you're sending an email to. And I think that's very absolutely crucial because in cold email, you're reaching out to someone you don't know. So the more bridges you can build between them and you, the better. And the warmer the connection will be. So if I have like some sort of like boilerplate kind of cold email, I may be tempted to skip it. But if the PS is saying like, hey, Jeremy, by the way, I love Switzerland. I've been there. I really love where you're living. I may actually give it like a second shot. I say, okay, I give them the benefit of the doubt. They may be interested in connecting with me. So here we go. That's basically my point. So I think that's one of the most important things. Most people just read the first line, read the last line, delete. So you may have a second chance on the last line.
There's a reason why almost every sales letter on the internet uses PS or PPS or PPPS. It's just because it's one of the most read lines in an entire document, an entire email. So like Jeremy said, if you want a chance to get something across to your prospect, putting it in a PS almost guarantees that if they open that email, they're going to read that line.
Another example of a great PS is like, hey, I watch your show, I listen to your podcast episodes, whatever kind of thing that makes you trigger the reciprocity thing. But I think we're going to cover it to a future cast, reciprocity.
Okay, Jeremy, final question of the rapid fire episode. What should I do with my risky emails? So maybe, Jeremy, you can just tell us what we mean when we say risky emails.
Yeah, that's a great question. So risky email is basically when we can't determine for sure that an email is going to bounce or is valid. Bouncing emails are easy to spot. The domain may be invalid or the format is not correct. Valid emails are also easy to spot for some servers that basically tell, hey, this email exists or this email doesn't exist. And for the rest, it's more tricky because the server may reply, go ahead, send me the email, and I'll tell you afterwards if this is a valid or not email. And that's what we call risky. It's like you're basically taking a bet that it's a valid email address. And if not, then the server is going to slap you on the wrist. So what do you do with them, Jack?
It is very tempting to just add them to your list of valid emails and send away. It's very tempting. You've already gone through the effort of list building, and list building is not easy, So when you get, that list, it would be nice to be able to add the maximum number of emails to your email sending software, but it's just not worth it. And here's why. And remember, this is coming from someone whose number one goal is to generate the maximum number of positive conversations, positive replies every single week. My business hinges on it. But if you stop and think about it, if your goal is to generate the most number of positive replies, the way you would go about doing that isn't by just throwing a lot of volume at your leads, because it's going to hurt your deliverability. And if you've got poor deliverability, then your replies are not going to be coming in. So if your primary goal is to get lots and lots of positive replies out of your email campaign, you'd be better off deleting all of your risky and undeliverable emails and just sending to a smaller number of verified emails. That way, most of those emails are going to land in the inbox and you'll have the best chance of getting a reply.
There's other ways, like, you can verify on Gravatar that they do have an icon. You can verify on Twitter, social media, whatever kind of thing. But at the end of the day, if you're using a tool like Bright Verify or other, very well advanced tools, they're going to tell you, if they found it or not. Usually they'll come back, like, I think Hunter does that, like they come back with a level of confidence. And that basically means like, hey, I couldn't verify the email for sure exists, but, the Gravatar link seems to match. Or that social media seems to match, so therefore there may be a higher chances of the emails to be correct. That said, you can try doing it yourself, but like I say, those tools are probably already doing it.
Chances are you'd probably be better off spending your time finding new prospects than you would be to try and validate every single risky email you have by doing manual internet research. There's a good chance that the payoff will be greater if you can tap into new lists and new segments that you can find verified emails for.
At the end of the day, you're probably better off trying to double your reply rate, because then you will need only half the leads.
Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you.
If you got some value from this episode, give us a high five by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher or TuneIn. That works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast.
So they can send awesome emails.
And make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.